Germany is home to 40 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Few countries have more. To earn that distinction, UNESCO stipulates that the sites have to be authentic, unique, and of outstanding universal value. The German World Heritage Sites reveal a lot about the country's history, European history, and in fact, the history of all humankind. We've chosen some of them to show what makes Germany's World Heritage so unique and significant. Aachen Cathedral in North Rhine-Westphalia became Germany's first World Heritage Site in 1978. In medieval times, Charlemagne, King of the Franks and Emperor of Western Europe, made Aachen the capital of his empire. He wanted to create a new Rome and built his magnificent Palatine Chapel, the oldest part of the cathedral, in the late 8th century AD. For his chapel, Charlemagne chose an octagonal central domed basilica. The cupola's vaulting long remained unequaled in its height and breadth. For 600 years after 936 AD, the Palatine Chapel remained the church where the kings of Germany and the Holy Roman Empire were crowned. More than 30 of them ascended the throne here, the same marble throne used by Charlemagne. Over the centuries, the cathedral's collection of artworks and artifacts has grown to be one of the largest sacred treasures in Europe. This late Gothic bust of Charlemagne was probably donated around 1349. This relic contains bones from Charlemagne's right arm. Aachen Cathedral has been a place of pilgrimage since the Middle Ages. The shrine to the Virgin Mary contains relics sacred to the Catholic faith, among them Christ's loincloth. Since the Middle Ages, these relics have been displayed to believers from Europe and the rest of the world every 7 years.
I believe the cathedral has real international significance. You can see that by the numbers of people who come here. But it's especially significant for Europe. I believe Aachen Cathedral, as Charlemagne's Church of the Virgin Mary, is Europe's church.
Aachen Cathedral's Palatine Chapel is one of the best preserved monuments from the Carolingian period. Around €1 million are spent annually on maintenance. UNESCO World Heritage status means these sites have to be protected and preserved for future generations. Germany has to inform UNESCO regularly about the state of its heritage sites. Charlemagne created a unique edifice. When he died in 814, he was buried in his church, Aachen Cathedral. Crocodiles, serpents, and prehistoric horses once lived here. Before the continents drifted apart, dense tropical rainforest grew here. Now, the Messel pit fossil site near Frankfurt is a rich source of prehistoric fossils. It became Germany's first UNESCO Natural Heritage Site in 1995. One of the best-known Messel finds is an extinct ancestor of present-day horses. What makes the Messel pit so unique is the broad range of excellently preserved fossils from the Eocene era. No other site in the world has fossils as well preserved as these. In the Messel pit's oil shale, not only have individual bones been found, but also entire skeletons. In the case of some vertebrates, even their hides and fur, and the contents of their stomachs. To date, scientists have excavated some 30,000 finds, among them 40 different species of mammals. Scarcely any other fossil site has been more yielding than the Messel pit. By studying the fossilized remains from this era, experts can research a world that disappeared millions of years ago. The Messel pit is the remains of a 47-million-year-old volcanic lake. The flora and fauna that died and sank to the bottom of the lake were preserved. The first fossil was found in 1875, a crocodile. For a long time, the Messel pit was an oil shale quarry. When quarrying stopped, there were plans to use what's now a World Heritage Site as a landfill. Those plans were finally abandoned in 1991. The pit has now been preserved as a window to the Eocene era. Nowadays, it's one of the world's most significant fossil sites. This German World Heritage Site gives us an insight into the antecedents of human life on Earth. Back in the 16th century, one man influenced people in Germany, Europe, and far beyond. Martin Luther, father of the Protestant Reformation in Germany. In 1517, he's said to have nailed his 95 theses, criticizing the Roman Catholic practice of selling indulgences on the door of All Saints' Church in Wittenberg. It started a movement that ultimately led to the founding of the Lutheran denomination. The Reformation found supporters the world over. Luther's theses are now engraved into the present-day door. You can view the Reformer's tomb inside the church. In 1508, Martin Luther moved into what's called the Luther House, a former monastery in Wittenberg. Students, friends, and other guests regularly assembled at the dining table. His wife, Katharina von Bora, with whom he had 6 children, ran the large household. For their memorials associated with Luther, the towns of Wittenberg and nearby Eisleben were made UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 1996. Luther was born in Eisleben and also died there. In St. Andrew's Church, the original pulpit where Luther delivered his last sermons shortly before his death has been preserved. Luther was born in this house in 1483.
As early as 1583, for the 100th anniversary of his birth, a large sign was posted on the house where he was born to inform visitors. You can see that even back then, Lutheran pilgrims came to Eisleben.
The exhibition in Luther's birth house is devoted to the religious reformer's origins. The Luther memorials in Wittenberg and Eisleben are authentic settings of decisive events in the Reformation. They offer an insight into the life and works of Martin Luther. Wartburg Castle near Eisenach in the state of Thüringen is also closely associated with Martin Luther. He found refuge here after he'd published his thesis and then was excommunicated by the Pope and outlawed by the Holy Roman Emperor. The castle's foundations were laid in about 1067, and the building has great symbolic historical importance. Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, who was later canonized for her services to the sick and the poor, lived here in the 13th century. The castle is also said to have been the setting for the legendary minstrels contest, in which poets such as Walter von der Vogelweide took part. Wartburg Castle became a World Heritage Site in 1999.
Wartburg Castle was recognized, first because it's an especially beautiful example of the feudal era in medieval Central Europe, and also because it's so closely linked to important concepts in the history of ideas and faith in Europe, because Martin Luther began translating the Bible into German here.
Luther wanted all Christians to be able to read the Bible. He translated the New Testament from ancient Greek into German in just a few weeks. Legend has it that Luther threw an inkwell at the devil in his study here. He hid in the castle from 1521 to 1522. Countless pilgrims have made their way to his study since then. Martin Luther made Wartburg Castle world famous. The two German writers Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Friedrich Schiller are also part of the world's cultural heritage. In the years around 1800, Goethe and Schiller dominated the literary and artistic movement known as Weimar Classicism. The places where they lived and worked in Weimar were declared UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 1998. Karl August, Duke of Saxe-Weimar-Eisenach, supported Goethe in particular, and the two men shared a close friendship. After Weimar's city palace burnt down in 1774, Goethe supervised its reconstruction for the Duke. Karl August also conferred other positions on Goethe. In 1797, he put him in charge of the ducal book collection. Goethe ran the library for 35 years and made it one of the most important German libraries of its time. The Anna Amalia Library is one of the most important archives of the Weimar Classicism era. It still contains books with which Christoph Martin Wieland, Johann Gottfried Herder, Schiller, Goethe, and many other writers of the time worked. Schiller's and Goethe's homes in Weimar are also World Heritage Sites. Goethe lived in this large house for 50 years until his death in 1832. It provided him with plenty of room for his art collection. Here he wrote such works as Faust and the novel Elective Affinities. The park on the River Ilm in Weimar. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's garden house is in the middle of the park. The writer lived there between 1776 and 1782. Now it too is used as a Goethe museum. Weimar was a focus of intellectual life in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Now you can trace that intellectual life in many places there. The Zollverein industrial complex in Essen in North Rhine-Westphalia is an example of industrial heritage. Once the world's largest and most modern coal mining complex, it exemplifies the development of heavy industry in Europe.
This region's origins lie with coal and steel, and it's very important for the region and its identity to preserve and document individual facilities, so people can see how they operated, how people worked here, and also how they lived.
The former industrial complex has been a World Heritage Site since 2001. The colliery went into operation in 1851, and coal was mined and processed there for more than 100 years. The name Zollverein refers to a free trade association between several German states established in 1834 to promote economic growth. For the Zollverein complex and the entire Ruhr region, coal mining actually did bring prosperity for years. In the 1930s, 12,000 tons of coal a day were extracted. In the early 1950s, more than 7,000 miners worked here. In 1986, the complex was shut down because mining was no longer profitable here. Its buildings, representative of modern industrial architecture, were given listed status, preserving them for future generations. The former coal mine has now been transformed into a modern leisure and arts center. Concerts, theater productions, and other artistic and cultural events regularly take place in the Zollverein complex, among gigantic machines that evoke the noisy, dusty working conditions of the past. The Zollverein is a World Heritage Site that symbolizes a bygone industrial age, a heritage site that's reinvented itself. In the 1920s, revolutionary ideas in architecture and design spread to the world from Dessau in Saxony-Anhalt. Buildings by such architects as Walter Gropius, Hannes Meyer and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe established the Bauhaus style. The Bauhaus became the 20th century's most important school of architecture, design and art. In 1926, Gropius founded the School of Design in Dessau. Its professors were well-known artists and architects. As a reform movement after the First World War, the Bauhaus also had social aspirations. It aimed to create prototypes of objects and spaces for a more humane society of the future. The Bauhaus wanted to rethink design from scratch. Both the school building itself and the ensemble of masters' houses in Dessau became World Heritage Sites in 1996. The Bauhaus lecturers lived in the masters' houses. Their construction from 1925 to 1926 was funded by the city of Dessau. Walter Gropius designed them, and they were examples of a modern and comfortable lifestyle. The masters' houses came to epitomize the 20th century artists' colony. Several of the cube-shaped dwellings and studio buildings were severely damaged in World War II. They were rebuilt in 2014. Now contemporary interpretations of the masters' houses stand on the ground plans of the originals. The Bauhaus is still considered a defining influence on style and very up-to-date.
It's about the relationship we have to objects, resources and materials. And people see the Bauhaus differently. They admire its social ambitions and the way it blurred the lines between craftsmanship and industrial production.
There are also Bauhaus buildings that are World Heritage Sites in Weimar, like the Haus am Horn. This model house was designed by Georg Muche for the first Bauhaus exhibition in 1923. Back then, many people in Weimar were irritated by its completely unfamiliar architectural style. The spirit of the Bauhaus lives on at the Bauhaus University in Weimar. Before the Bauhaus moved to Dessau, Walter Gropius founded this school in 1919 as the Staatliche Bauhaus Weimar. It was a new type of art academy. Disciplines such as architecture, crafts, and art, which were usually separate, were linked together. Nowadays, the Bauhaus University in Weimar also devotes itself equally to artistic and technical disciplines. Here, more than 4,000 students learn subjects ranging from civil engineering to fine art and design. The Bauhaus achieved international renown in the 20th century, and to this day it remains a synonym for the uncompromising modernization of art, design, and architecture worldwide. Much of the history of Western European civilization is reflected in a single stretch of countryside in Germany, the Upper Middle Rhine Valley in Rhineland-Pfalz. The 65 kilometers of river valley between Bingen and Koblenz have been a World Heritage Site since 2002. For 2 millennia, the Middle Rhine Valley was one of the most important transport routes for cultural exchange between the Mediterranean region and Northern Europe. It was in this way that the Romans brought their customs, and especially their wine, to the Rhine. The terraced vineyards in the Upper Middle Rhine Valley prosper in the mild climate. There are countless wine-growing villages along the river's banks. The beauty of the natural surroundings and the many castles, fortresses, and palaces on the fertile slopes of this river valley led to a boom in tourism as early as the 18th century. The Rhine became a romantic destination, and it's remained one to this day. The castles of the Upper Middle Rhine Valley were built almost without exception between the 12th and 14th centuries. Most of them were hilltop castles, built on ledges or terraces halfway up the steep slopes. There are many rocky crags and spectacular views along the hiking trails in the Upper Middle Rhine. Villages and towns of various sizes line the banks of the great river like pearls on a string. There are many of them on the Rhine between Bingen and Koblenz. For centuries, they've been destinations for travelers from around the world. The best way to see the Upper Middle Rhine Valley is from the water. The valley is also home to a cliff steeped in legend. The beautiful siren Lorelei was said to have sat on the cliff, luring sailors with her singing and causing them to crash their boats. This saga contains an element of truth. The narrow section of the river where the Lorelei lies is known for its swift currents, which can be dangerous for shipping. Writers, painters, and musicians have been inspired by this landscape. UNESCO granted the Upper Middle Rhine Valley World Heritage status because of its variety and beauty. 40 places in Germany have been declared World Heritage Sites. Each of them an important part of our legacy.